Welcome to Northern Star Generation Policy Training for Number Safety 211, Incident Response, Reporting, and Investigation. The purpose of this policy is to ensure the proper and timely response to regulatory-related incidents. As part, this policy establishes minimum reporting requirements for management of environmental, health, safety, NERC, and security incidents at Northern Star operated facilities. This policy applies to all NSGS operated facilities and any person working at the facility. That includes regular employees, contractors, or temporary employees. This policy also applies to any NSGS employee working at other locations. The overall purpose of this policy is to ensure that incidents are properly reported, documented, managed, and investigated. The first question we must answer is, what is an incident? What is actually covered by this policy? Well, for purposes of this policy, it includes safety incidents, environmental incidents, security incidents, and NERC incidents. For safety, it includes recordable injuries, significant first aid incidents, significant near miss or hazardous situations. That could include a fire, chemical release, and it also includes vehicle incidents that result in damage or injury. Environmental incidents include reportable spills, permit exceedances, or permit violations, or even potential permit violations if we think there's the possibility that we have a violation. Security incidents are also included, and those include physical or electronic breaches of our physical security systems, theft of company or personal property, threat of harm to the company or employee. It also includes other suspicious activities such as surveillance of our facilities. NERC incidents include incidents or occurrences that require notification to NERC or would indicate a potential violation of a NERC standard that's applicable to your facility. So once we have an incident, what should employees do about it? All NSG employees must report all incidents, including safety concerns, suspected security, or environmental incidents as soon as possible. Even if we're not sure we're having a reportable incident, it's always best to report it so that it can be properly investigated and reported and managed as soon as possible. If there's an injury, no matter how small, it must be reported to your supervisor before leaving the plant. That's important because even small injuries have the potential of becoming bigger incidents later. We need to document and respond to all injuries appropriately. Therefore, employees should not seek medical treatment on their own. Please contact supervisors or site EHS representatives to coordinate so that we can properly get any injury properly taken care of. Employees also need to participate in investigations and reporting concerns that could lead to incidents. It's always best to try to prevent incidents before they happen. For contractors and temporary employees, it's also important to report all incidents and suspected incidents as soon as possible to your NSGS sponsor. Those reports should be made within 24 hours. Additionally, we need to report investigation findings and corrective actions taken. We need to communicate any injuries and employee conditions, work restrictions, or medical treatments related to any injury on NSG property. Now, let's spend a few minutes and talk about the injury process. Site management must report the incident by phone, email, or text to corporate EHS as soon as possible. The injured employee's supervisor or site EHS management team should manage the medical treatment and accompany the injured employee to any third-party treatment that's necessary. It's very important to note that employees must never drive themselves to a medical assessment or treatment. If the incident is serious or there's a loss of consciousness, immediately call 911. The company will pay for ambulatory services regardless of the cause. This includes whether it's work-related or a personal medical incident. If third-party medical treatment is necessary, the company also has an obligation to notify our workers' compensation insurance carrier. OSHA may also be required to be notified depending on the level of injury and the required treatment. Return to work should be encouraged for all employees. The facility should take reasonable steps to accommodate all restrictions. It's important to make sure that we're communicating to employees to observe those restrictions at all times. Finally, a formal incident report must be filed within 48 hours of the incident. Now, it's very important to note all medical-related records must be secured and locked and only shared with appropriate personnel and only on a needs-to-know basis. If your facility experiences a chemical release or fire that threatens employees' safety, all personnel should immediately be evacuated to a safe area. Response to the incident must only be limited to personnel who have been properly trained and authorized by site emergency planning. Unauthorized response will result in discipline up to and including termination. If you're not properly trained and authorized to respond, stay in a safe evacuated area. If the response is beyond the facility's level of training, the situation will be turned over to outside responders as quickly as possible. Corporate EHS and executive leadership must be notified of the situation as soon as possible by phone, email, and text. As with incidents, formal incident reports must be completed within 48 hours of the occurrence. If your facility experiences a security incident or security threat, it is important to note that our first priority is the protection of all employees. As such, all necessary steps should be taken to protect plant employees, including possible shelter in place. Notification of local law enforcement should also be taken depending on the situation. All suspicious activity, no matter how minor, should be documented and reported to corporate EHS. For actual security incidents, a formal incident report must be filed within 48 hours. Should the facility have a media request or communication, all communications and responses should be made by trained personnel and at the discretion of the plant manager and Northern Star's president and CEO. If we have a NERC-related incident, any suspected violation must be reported immediately to plant management and Site Reliability Compliance Manager as defined by the facility's Incident Management Program. The plant management shall notify corporate EHS of the situation as soon as possible to determine if reporting obligations have been triggered under NERC reliability standards. The regulatory notification process will be determined on a case-by-case basis by a Northern Star corporate management team and outside counsel. Next, let's talk about agency inspections, permit violations, or exceedances. Corporate EHS must be notified immediately of any suspected permit exceedance or violation, including if the issue is raised during an audit or site regulatory inspection. Corporate EHS shall also be notified if the site is the subject of a regulatory inspection, regardless if there's any findings. It's important in all cases to keep a documentation of inspections in the event of a later dispute. Any required government initial notices, such as bill reports, SEMS exceedance reports, shall be made by the plant management. Any written reports or responses following up to these incidents must be approved by corporate EHS and outside counsel prior to submission to any agency. The purpose of incident investigation is to determine and document the incident's details, causes, and corrective actions. Site management and corporate EHS will work together to determine the appropriate level of incident investigation depending on the incident. The investigation should be completed within 14 days, but no longer than 30 days depending on the situation's complexity. It is the responsibility of the site management team to ensure this policy is understood by all employees and integrated into site practices and procedures. This presentation is meant to provide an overview of the policy and not meant to be a substitute for specific policy language. Please review the policy periodically to ensure site personnel have been trained to understand their responsibilities and to have appropriate resources to implement the actions defined.